They sold my wedding ring to pay for their vacation. I wasn't even allowed to attend my own granddaughter's birthday party. At 68, I wasn't a mother or a grandmother to them. I was just a burden. But then something happened, something they never saw coming. Hi, I'm Lorraine, and if you're over 60, feeling invisible, abused, or discarded by the very family you raised, then please stay with me. Like, share, subscribe, because this isn't just my story, it's our story. And it's time we speak it out loud. They didn't even ask me. They didn't ask if I was okay with it. They didn't ask if it meant anything to me. They didn't even pretend to care. They just took it. My wedding ring. I'm sorry if I get emotional, but if you've ever been through something like this, if you've ever sat in the same room with your family and felt more alone than you did at your husband's funeral, then you know what I'm talking about. Please, before I tell you everything, hit that like button, share this if it speaks to you, and subscribe. Not just for me, but for every older woman who's been made to feel invisible. We matter. We have stories. And today, you're going to hear mine. I'm Lorraine Mayfield. I'm 68 years old, a widow, and until last year, I lived in the guest room of my only son's house. Not with my son. At his house. There's a difference. After Harold died, I sold everything to move closer to family. He left me a modest pension, some savings, and a house filled with memories. We were married 41 years. He made me laugh. He held my hand every night before bed, even after the stroke made it hard for him to speak. He wasn't perfect, but he saw me, and I haven't felt that kind of visibility since he left this earth. My son, Jeremy, told me, "You'll never be alone, Mom. You've got us." His wife, Ashley, smiled that fake smile women wear when they're already planning your slow removal. "Your family," she said. And like a fool, I believed her. The first month wasn't too bad. I stayed in the guest room, helped clean, made dinner most nights. I didn't mind, they worked long hours. But it didn't take long before my presence went from helpful to annoying. They started calling me needy for asking to join family dinners. I remember once, I made Ashley's favorite lemon pie. She said she was watching calories, then threw it in the trash right in front of me. Jeremy laughed. My granddaughter, Ivy, used to sneak into my room to braid my hair and read books. But one day, Ashley told her, "Grandma needs her rest." After that, Ivy stopped coming in. She stopped everything, even hugging me. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and everything valuable of mine was gone. My necklace, a few silver frames, my ring. That ring was my life. Harold saved for months to buy it in the 70s. He worked overtime laying bricks in the winter, frostbitten fingers, a bad back, the whole story, just so I could have something shiny on my hand when we got married. It wasn't just gold. It was love, loyalty, legacy. They sold it. When I asked Jeremy where it went, he couldn't even look me in the eye. Ashley just shrugged. We were short on cash for the cruise. You weren't using it. No apology. No shame. That night, I cried in the dark like a child. Not just for the ring. For what it meant. For how easily they erased me. I wanted to leave. But I had nowhere to go. I had sold my house, my car, everything to come live near them. I thought I was securing a future filled with warmth and love. But what I'd done was surrender my independence. I was nothing but a live-in ghost. And then came Ivy's birthday. Ashley planned this big bash, balloons, ponies, even a magician. I helped with the invitations, made the cake from scratch. But the night before the party, Ashley came into my room and said, "It's going to be too crowded, Lorraine. Maybe you can just relax in here with a book." I wasn't invited to my own granddaughter's birthday. I heard them laughing through the walls while I sat alone with a slice of cake I made but wasn't allowed to serve. That was the day I realized I didn't belong there. That was also the day something inside me snapped. I started keeping a notebook, writing down everything. What they said, what they did, where the money was going. Who came and left the house when they thought I wasn't watching. I don't know what I was building yet, but I knew I needed proof. And I had a strange feeling that something was coming, something bigger than all of us. Something that would turn everything upside down. You know, the hardest part isn't the insults. It's the silence. It's walking into a room and hearing the conversation die. It's being referred to in third person while you're sitting right there, like you're not even human anymore. She's probably sleeping. She won't understand this. Don't worry, she's fine where she is. They don't say mom or grandma anymore. I became she. And she was only useful when bills were due or when they needed someone to watch Ivy. If you're still watching, thank you. If you've ever felt erased, pushed aside after giving your whole life to a family, please comment below. You're not alone. You deserve to be seen. Now, let me take you back to one evening that still haunts me. It was a Wednesday. Ashley was in the living room, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling her phone. Jeremy was complaining about money again. The mortgage, the car payments, Ivy's school fees, everything's piling up. He said it loud enough for me to hear. And I knew what was coming. That night, Ashley knocked on my door with this fake smile again. Lorraine, do you think you could help with the electricity bill this month? I told her I had already given them $300 the week before. She didn't even blink. Well, we didn't expect to run into so many costs. Maybe you could help a little more. I had $2,000 left in my savings account. That was it. And I had already handed over most of it, thinking I was helping my son during a rough patch. But it wasn't a patch. It was a pattern. When I hesitated, Ashley's smile dropped. Look, you're living here rent-free. You eat our food, you use our utilities, rent-free. After I gave them my car. After I cashed in Harold's life insurance to help Jeremy after his business failed. I had never felt so cheap in my life. But I gave her the money. Again. And that night, I went into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror, and I swear to you, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Wrinkled. Tired. Hollowed out like some broken doll. I remember whispering to myself, "You're not weak. You're not worthless." But deep down, I wasn't sure if I believed it. The next morning, they left me a list of chores taped to my door. Vacuum, dishes, laundry. Ashley even wrote in parentheses next to laundry, use the gentle cycle. You keep shrinking Jeremy's shirts. Like I was the maid. I don't know what broke me more, that they treated me this way, or that I let them. And the cherry on top? That weekend, they went out of town with friends. Didn't even tell me until the morning of. I had no food in the fridge, no money. Ivy left me a crayon drawing that said, "By Grandma," and I clung to that picture like it was a goodbye letter. I sat in that quiet house and realized I had become something I never imagined I'd be. An old woman, alone, unwanted, forgotten. But something else happened that weekend. Something they didn't expect. I found a file on Ashley's computer. I wasn't snooping. Okay, maybe I was. But after all the gaslighting, all the guilt trips, I needed to know why they were bleeding me dry. The file was titled Plan B, Emergency Finance. Inside, there were breakdowns of my pension, my assets, and notes about what could be liquidated. Me. I was a spreadsheet to them. There were even notes about placing me in a senior care facility if she becomes too much. Too much. For what? Loving them? They were already planning their exit strategy. So I made one of my own. I called an old friend, Janine, from my church group back in Ohio. We hadn't spoken in years, but she picked up like no time had passed. I didn't even tell her the whole story, just a few lines, and she said, "Honey, get out of there. You can come stay with me. We'll figure it out." But I wasn't ready to run just yet. No, not until I had something more than heartbreak in my hands. So I smiled, pretended nothing was wrong, kept cooking their meals, kept cleaning their floors, all while writing it all down. Every cruel comment, every dollar taken, every friend they gossiped about, every photo I could snap of those business trips that didn't look very businesslike. Because one day soon, the woman they thought was broken, She was going to rise. Have you ever been so invisible that they literally cropped you out of the family photo? If that's ever happened to you, or if they treat you like a background prop in your own life, please like this video, share it, and leave a comment. You have no idea how many women feel this way. And maybe, just maybe, your voice will help someone else find theirs. Let me tell you what happened that Sunday. It was a warm spring afternoon. Ivy had a recital. I ironed her dress, polished her little shoes, even curled her hair while Ashley got ready upstairs. I was so proud of Ivy, her tiny fingers dancing across the piano keys like she was born with music in her bones. She waved at me from the stage, smiling like only an 8-year-old can. For a moment, I felt like a real grandmother again. But after the recital, when we got home, Ashley called for a quick family photo in the garden. I stood beside Ivy, smiling, hand on her shoulder. Jeremy was setting the timer on the phone. Ashley looked at me, then looked at Jeremy, and said, "Actually, let's just do one with the 3 of us for now. Just the 3 of them." I stepped back slowly, pretending I understood. My hands trembled as I folded them behind my back. I watched them pose, smiling, happy, golden hour lighting. A picture-perfect family. Without me. And you know what stung more than being excluded? Ashley posted that photo that night with the caption, "Grateful for my perfect little family. Just us. Forever." No mention of me. No thanks to Grandma for doing Ivy's hair. No acknowledgement at all. I was in that house, under that roof, breathing that same air, and yet I had never felt so erased. And it got worse. That same week, I overheard Ashley on the phone with her sister, saying, "She's old, bitter, and honestly not all there anymore. If she had any money left, maybe I'd try harder to be nice." So that was it. My value was tied to what I could give, not who I was. Let me pause and say something, especially if you're a woman over 60. You are not a wallet. You are not a housekeeper. You are not someone's second option when the babysitter cancels. You are a person. With worth. With fire. With memory. And sometimes when they push you into silence, your memory becomes your loudest weapon. Because that same day, I remembered something Harold once told me. He said, if they take advantage of your kindness, keep your eyes open. Quiet people always see the most. I did exactly that. I started printing out everything. Screenshots of texts, emails they left open, messages about Jeremy's debts and Ashley's side ventures that were very questionable. I kept everything in a manila envelope hidden inside my old Bible, the one they never touched because they weren't into that stuff. I may have been silent, but I was building something. That night, I sat in the dark and made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for them to change. I was going to change what they depended on. They didn't know it yet, but the balance of power was about to shift. The final straw came the next morning. Jeremy walked in with a banker. Didn't even knock. He said, "Mom, we're thinking about taking out a mortgage extension, but since your name's still technically on the secondary account, we need your signature." I blinked. My name? Turns out, when I sold my house and moved in, Jeremy had helped me set up a joint account to transfer my funds safely. What I didn't know, what I wasn't supposed to know, was that he had linked that account to a loan application. My son, my own blood, using my name for a mortgage on a house I didn't even own. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Let me think about it." Then I walked back into my room, closed the door, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Because they had just made a mistake. A big one. They thought I was stupid. Weak. Too old to understand paperwork or digital banking or legal terms. But Harold taught me more than just how to be a wife. He taught me how to survive. And now I had something even stronger than proof. I had leverage. Sometimes you reach a point where the pain no longer surprises you. It just confirms what you already knew. But the moment you realize that pain can be turned into power, that's when your story starts to shift. If you've ever felt powerless, but knew deep down you still had fight in you, like I did, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. We're not finished yet. My story's just getting started. So, let's talk about the envelope. For weeks, I'd been collecting everything: photos, receipts, printed texts, screenshots, a copy of the joint bank account application. Every time they made me feel like furniture, I documented. Every cruel word, every financial move. I turned my pain into paperwork. And when Jeremy asked me to sign that mortgage extension, something in my spine straightened. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just excused myself and called an old number I hadn't dialed in years. His name was Leonard Marsh. He was Harold's friend, an estate lawyer. Harold used to call him the Hound because he never let go of anything once he got a whiff. I still had his number saved under Len, just in case. He answered on the second ring. "Lorraine? My God, is that you?" His voice nearly broke me. I hadn't heard my name said with care in so long. I told him everything, not as a victim, but as a woman finally ready to do something about it. Len didn't ask dumb questions. He didn't blame me or shame me. He just said, "Bring me everything. We'll make sure they regret this." That night, I waited until Jeremy and Ashley were asleep. I wrapped my envelope in a grocery bag and walked 3 blocks to the gas station, where Janine picked me up. She drove me straight to Len's office. We sat under buzzing fluorescent lights as I emptied the envelope onto his desk. He whistled. "They used your name for a mortgage application without full consent. That's fraud." Then he flipped through the texts. Verbal abuse, financial exploitation, possibly elder abuse under state law. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I just wanted freedom. Safety. Options. So we built a plan. The first step? Separate my name from everything. We moved what was left of my money into a private account. He sent a cease and desist to the mortgage office using my name and revoked all shared permissions. And we filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services quietly, discreetly. They had no idea the storm was coming. When I came back to the house, Ashley was watching TV, feet on the coffee table. She barely looked up. "Did you sign the papers?" I smiled. "No, Ashley. I didn't." She paused. "Excuse me. I didn't sign them. And I won't. And starting today, I'm no longer covering any of your bills." Jeremy came downstairs half-dressed. "What's this about?" I looked him dead in the eye. "You've taken thousands from me. Lied to me. Cut me off from my own granddaughter. And now you want me to help you scam a bank." His face dropped. Ashley scoffed. "We took care of you." I laughed. "You used me. And now that you can't anymore. I wonder how long your perfect little family can stay afloat." I walked into my room, locked the door, and began packing. I wasn't waiting for them to throw me out. I was leaving. But before I zipped up the last suitcase, Ivy came in. She was holding the crayon drawing she'd made me creased, but still intact. She hugged me and whispered, "Are you going away, Grandma?" My voice cracked. "Just for a while, sweetheart." She didn't understand. But she felt it. Children always do. And I made her a promise. This isn't goodbye. This is me doing what I should have done a long time ago. Standing up for myself. When I left that house, I wasn't crying. I was free. And what came next? Well, let's just say I didn't need to seek revenge. Life was about to handle that for me. If you ever wondered what happens when the money dries up and the doormat finally stands up, you're about to find out. Please, if this story is hitting you somewhere deep, don't scroll. Like, share, and subscribe. Let's make sure women like us are never pushed into silence again. So here's what happened after I left that house. Freedom felt cold at first. Janine took me in. Gave me the guest room in her little blue bungalow just outside the city. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. She made me tea every morning, and for the first time in years, someone asked how I was feeling, not what I could give. I had no income now, no home of my own, and barely any savings left. But I had peace. And peace was worth more than anything they ever drained from me. Meanwhile, back at the house I used to call home, things started to fall apart. It began with the lights. Ashley called Jeremy at work in a panic. The power's out. Everything's dead. Turns out, the electricity bill hadn't been paid. Why? Because I had been paying it. Then came the water notice. The overdue HOA fees. Ivy's private school tuition went unpaid, and they pulled her out mid-semester. Ashley screamed at the school receptionist, but it didn't matter. The check bounced. Without me, their perfect little family started unraveling at the seams. And then came the big one. The bank denied their mortgage extension. Because I'd pulled my name off the account and reported unauthorized use of my information. They were shocked, furious, panicking. They called me over a dozen times. Voicemails filled with fake sweetness and then veiled threats. Jeremy left one that said, "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're ruining us." Ashley said, "How dare you betray your own family like this?" Family. They only used that word when they wanted something. I didn't pick up the phone, but I kept the recordings. Because Leonard told me something I'll never forget. The people who hurt you will rewrite the story if you let them. Keep your version sharp. While they spiraled, I did the unthinkable. I started over. Janine helped me get a part-time clerical job at the church office. It wasn't much, but it gave me structure. Purpose. I walked to work every morning in the fresh air and stopped at the same bakery every Friday for a cinnamon roll. I began to laugh again. To live again. And one afternoon, about 3 weeks after I'd left, I ran into a woman outside the church. She was maybe in her late 60s. Shaky, tears in her eyes. She looked like me 3 months ago. She asked if she could come inside for a moment. She didn't say much, but I could see it, the fear, the shame, the bruises that weren't visible but weighed her down. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I gave her my seat in the back row. I stayed with her through the whole service. Afterward, I told her my story, not the short version, the whole thing. She cried. We hugged. And then she whispered, I thought I was the only one. That's when I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was healing. And through that healing, I was helping someone else find the courage to walk away from her own prison. But back in Jeremy and Ashley's world, their house had gone up for sale. They were broke. Word got out. People started whispering about the fraud, about the sudden unraveling of their lives. They tried to pin it all on me, but no one believed them. Why? Because Len had sent a final letter. A legal notice stating that if they continued harassment or false claims, we'd take it to court and expose every receipt, every photo, every lie. They went quiet after that. No more calls. No more crocodile tears. Just silence. Sweet, glorious silence. But Ivy? She sent me a letter. Crayon-drawn hearts on the envelope. Inside, she wrote, I miss you, Grandma. When can I visit? And just like that, I remembered why I had to stay strong. Not for revenge. Not for pride. But for the little girl who still saw me. Let me tell you something real quick. When you start reclaiming your peace, your power, and your self-worth, the same people who stepped on you suddenly remember your name. And sometimes, they even show up at your door. If you've ever had someone abuse you, discard you, then crawl back when their world collapsed, leave a comment. Let me know I'm not alone. Like and share this video if you felt that twist of guilt they try to plant in your chest. That guilt doesn't belong to you anymore. Let me tell you about the knock. It was a Sunday. The sky was gray and heavy, like it knew something uncomfortable was about to happen. Janine and I were folding laundry in the kitchen. Gospel music played low on the radio. And then 3 sharp knocks. Janine peeked out through the blinds and whispered, It's him. Jeremy. Standing on the porch, holding Ivy by the hand, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. I froze. Every part of me wanted to walk away. But Janine gave me that look, you know, the one that says, you need to face this, honey. On your terms. So I opened the door. Jeremy cleared his throat. Mom. Ivy's eyes lit up. Grandma. She rushed forward and hugged me tight around the waist. I held her close, but I didn't take my eyes off him. He was thinner. His shirt was wrinkled. He looked like a man unraveling at the seams. "Ashley's gone," he said finally. "Took the last of our savings and left. She's staying with her sister now." I didn't say a word. I didn't know everything she was doing. I swear. I should have stopped it, but I was scared. And tired. And stupid. Still, silence. He looked down. "We lost the house. I'm staying with a friend, but he's asking us to leave by the end of the week." I didn't know where else to go. And then the final blow: "I need your help, Mom. Please." Let that sink in. The man who once told me I was lucky to have a roof over my head was now the one without a roof of his own. The woman they made feel like a burden was suddenly the one they needed. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me gently so Ivy wouldn't hear what I was about to say. "You didn't just stand by, Jeremy. You were part of it. You let her humiliate me. You let her take everything. And you watched me become invisible in the house I helped build." He nodded, eyes wet. But I didn't feel sorry. I felt clear. "You're not staying here," I said. "But I'll help Ivy. Because she's innocent. Because she's a child. But I will never, ever let you treat me like that again. Not in this life." He swallowed hard. "So what now?" "Now," I said, "you figure out what it means to live without using other people as your safety net. You figure out how to be a father without expecting me to save you." And then I handed him a sealed envelope. Inside was a check for exactly $237.50, the same amount he once screamed at me over when I couldn't cover one of Ashley's Amazon orders. "That's all you're getting from me." He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just looked at me, like he was finally seeing someone he thought he'd buried a long time ago. I watched them walk away. And for the first time, I felt taller. I wasn't the invisible grandmother. I wasn't the pitiful old widow. I wasn't the family's afterthought. I was Lorraine Mayfield. And I had just shut the door on a lifetime of silence. You'd think after something like that, after your own son shows up broken, and begging, you'd feel wrecked inside. But let me tell you something surprising. The silence that followed, it healed me. If you've ever had to walk away from your own child, not out of hate, but out of self-respect, I want you to like this video, share it with someone who needs courage, and leave a comment if you've ever had to choose yourself after a lifetime of choosing others. For years, my identity was wrapped around them: Jeremy, Ashley, Ivy. Every meal I cooked, every dollar I gave, every time I bit my tongue. And when I finally said no, I thought I'd feel hollow. But what I felt was peace. I started taking long walks every morning. The kind Harold and I used to take in the fall, leaves crunching under our boots, our hands tucked inside one another's coat pockets. I'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without tiptoeing around someone else's mood. At Janine's house, I started reading again real books, not just the Bible or recipe cards. I joined a women's support group at the local senior center. That first day, I sat in a circle of women just like me, over 60, overlooked, overused. Some had been discarded by their children. Some by their husbands. Some simply by a society that no longer saw them as valuable. One woman said something I'll never forget. They thought they were throwing me away. But I was compost, and I grew. That hit me hard. Because I was growing, too. With every day I spent outside that toxic house, I felt stronger. More whole. And guess what? People started noticing. Not Jeremy. Not Ashley. But real people. The church secretary asked me to lead a small group for elder women on financial independence. Me, the woman who once didn't know how to log into her online bank account. I started sharing my story, not for pity, but for power. And women listened. One lady in her 70s said, "You gave me the strength to tell my daughter I wasn't going to pay her rent anymore." Another said, "I left my son's basement. I've got my own room now and it's small, but it's mine." That's when I realized something. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was ours. Our voice. Our pain. our triumph. Now, I won't lie to you. There were hard days, too. Nights when I'd hear a child's laughter and miss Ivy so much it ached in my bones. Mornings when I'd see an old photo and remember Jeremy as a baby and wonder how the boy who clung to my legs grew into a man who ignored my tears. But I never, not once, regretted standing up for myself. And I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I bought myself a second-hand bike. Rode it around the park with my hair tucked under a scarf like a teenager. I got a library card. I went to a senior dance and, yes, wore red lipstick. I even started recording my story on video, right here, for women like you. Because no one teaches us how to be powerful at this age. They teach us to be quiet, to shrink. But I'm done shrinking, and if you're watching this, maybe you're too. Let me tell you this, sister, it's never too late to take back your life. They may have forgotten who you are, but you remember now. And trust me, so will they. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been the one they mocked, only to become the one they needed later? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And if you've ever been called too old, too slow, or a burden, but then found your worth shining when they came crawling back, go ahead and like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that dignity doesn't age. Power doesn't expire. So here's what happened. I was in the middle of planting herbs in Janine's garden when I heard the phone ring inside. It was a quiet afternoon. Ivy-colored mint leaves in one hand, sunlight on my shoulders. I was humming something, maybe a hymn, maybe a memory. I can't remember. Janine called from the kitchen. "Lorraine, it's him. Again." I sighed, wiped the dirt off my hands. I didn't rush. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't that woman shaking in a guest room, waiting to be told I was too much. I picked up the phone and said nothing. Jeremy's voice came through the receiver like a ghost. "Mom, I'm sorry. I know I said that already, but I need you to hear it again." I stayed silent. He continued, "I've applied to 3 jobs. No luck. Ashley's cut all ties." And his voice cracked, "I'm at a point where I don't know what to do anymore. I have Ivy 3 days a week. She keeps asking about you." He paused. "Ivy wants to see you. She said you make her feel safe. She said she wishes she lived with you instead." That nearly broke me, because no child should have to say that. But you know what? It also told me something important. Even through all the cruelty, the manipulation, and the betrayal, I had made a mark. Not by yelling, not by giving, but by being there, by loving in the quiet, faithful way only a grandmother can. I took a breath and finally spoke. "She can visit me, but on my terms." Jeremy was quiet. Then he said, "I understand." And that's when the conversation shifted. He said something I didn't expect. "Mom, is there any way you could co-sign something small? Just a car. Something to help me get back on my feet." There it was. The request. The ask. The same pattern that had once drained me dry. But I had learned. Oh, how I had learned. I told him, "Jeremy, I won't co-sign anything for you. I won't fund your recovery. But I will help you build it if you're truly ready to change. And the first step? You go to counseling. You apologize to Ivy for making her feel like love can be taken away. And you tell her the truth about how you treated me." He was stunned. Not because I said no, but because I finally had terms, boundaries, strength. That's what healing does. It gives you your voice back. He didn't argue. He just said, "Okay, Mom, I'll do it." I hung up, walked outside, and finished planting my basil. Because sometimes the biggest victories happen quietly, while your hands are covered in soil and your soul is finally free. That week, Ivy came to visit. She ran into my arms, smelling like apples and childhood. We made cookies, watched cartoons. She fell asleep curled up against me like she did when she was little, before her mother poisoned her heart. And I knew in that moment, I was no longer surviving. I was thriving. The tables had turned. And now, I was the one holding the seat of power. Let me tell you, when people realize they've lost control over you, they'll try every trick in the book to get it back. They'll show up with smiles. They'll play the victim. They'll even write letters dripping in regret because they think words can erase what they did. If someone ever tried to guilt their way back into your life after tossing you aside, I want you to like this video, share it with someone strong like you, and drop a comment below. Let's speak truth for all the older women out there who've been through this cycle. Because one morning I opened the mailbox and there it was. A letter. From Ashley. Handwritten in that curly, dramatic script of hers, as if this were some delicate little misunderstanding and not years of cruelty. It began like this. Dear Lorraine, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. But I've had a lot of time to reflect. Things didn't go the way I planned. I'm staying with my sister for now, but it's not forever. Life's been hard without the stability we had at the house. I realize I could have treated you better. I see now that maybe I was too harsh. I'm sorry if you ever felt unwelcome. Let's pause right there. If you ever felt unwelcome, that's like saying, sorry you're so sensitive. Not, sorry I humiliated you, stole from you, and cut you out of your granddaughter's life. No, it was all carefully worded avoidance. Then came the real reason for the letter. My credit is shot. I can't apply for another loan. Jeremy said you've been helping him and Ivy, and I'm glad you're doing well. I was wondering if you'd be willing to co-sign just a small lease for me. It would really help me get back on my feet. There it was. The ask. Dressed up as a peace offering. I set the letter down slowly, folded it back into the envelope, and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. This wasn't about guilt or healing. This was about access. She didn't miss me. She missed my resources. You know, there was a time when this letter would have wrecked me. Made me cry. Made me question everything all over again. But I've come too far for that now. I didn't respond. Instead, I took the letter, tucked it behind a photo of Harold and me on our wedding day, and whispered, "You'd be proud of me." That night, I sat down with Ivy. I didn't tell her every ugly detail. She was still just a child. But I told her enough. I said, sometimes grown-ups make bad choices. And sometimes people say they're sorry just to get something back, not because they mean it. She nodded slowly and said, like how mommy says sorry when she wants me to stop crying, but doesn't change anything. That hit me like a punch to the chest. Even she knew. Even she saw it. I told her, you never have to pretend things are okay just to keep someone happy. Not even family. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said, I like how quiet it is here. You listen to me. That one sentence made every painful night in that house worth surviving. Because now I was showing her what real love looked like. Not transactional. Not conditional. Just love. Later that week, I got another message. Not from Ashley. Not from Jeremy. From a woman in my support group. She asked if I'd consider speaking at a community event for elder women dealing with family estrangement and financial abuse. Me, a speaker. I said yes. Not because I had all the answers, but because I had the one thing so many of us are still looking for. My voice. Do you know what courage really feels like? It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not some big, dramatic moment like in the movies. It's standing in front of strangers, holding a microphone with shaking hands, and telling the truth, especially when your voice was stolen for so many years. If you've ever been afraid to speak your truth, but you did it anyway, please like this video, share it with someone who needs courage today, and leave a comment. Let them know we're still standing. Because let me tell you about the day I stood at that podium. The event was held at a little community center. Folding chairs, coffee urns, and flyers printed in black and white. Nothing fancy. Just real people in a real room, talking about things no one ever wants to talk about. Women my age, some older, sat scattered throughout the audience. Some had walking canes. Some wore sweaters too big for their thin shoulders. But the one thing we all carried? That quiet ache. That deep knowing. We'd all been pushed aside. Discarded. Used. They handed me the microphone and said, "Whenever you're ready, Ms. Mayfield." Ms. Mayfield. Not, "Hey, Mom." Not, "She." I walked up, adjusted the mic, and looked out at the room. And then, I spoke. My name is Lorraine. I'm 68 years old. I was a mother, a wife, a grandmother, and for a long time, a doormat. I gave my family everything I had. My money, my time, my dignity. And one day, they thanked me by selling my wedding ring to pay for a vacation I wasn't invited on. The room went still. Every woman leaned in like they'd just heard a piece of their own story. They told me I was lucky to have a roof over my head, that I was difficult, that I was just too much. But the truth was, I wasn't too much. I was just inconvenient to people who didn't want to be reminded of where they came from. I told them about the ring, about being locked out of my granddaughter's birthday party, about being asked to sign away my financial future like it was nothing. I didn't cry, because I wasn't there to bleed. I was there to build. They thought I was done. But instead, I found my strength. I documented every moment. I got legal help. I left. And I built a new life. And when they came crawling back, because they always do, I had the power to say, no. A few women were already wiping their eyes. A few more clapped quietly. And now, I'm here to tell you, you don't need anyone's permission to protect yourself. You don't have to explain your boundaries. You don't owe your abusers grace they never gave you. That part got a few soft gasps. But I didn't flinch. Because every word was true. I ended with this. You are not disposable. You are not weak. And you're sure as hell not done yet. Because if I can rebuild my life after 68 years of silence, you can too. The applause was quiet at first. Then louder. And louder. One woman came up to me afterward, trembling, and said, "I thought I was crazy. My own daughter makes me feel like I'm nothing. But hearing you talk, it reminded me of who I used to be." And I hugged her. Because I was her. That event sparked something bigger than I ever imagined. Within a week, I was invited to speak at 2 more gatherings. Janine helped me start a blog. We named it Still Standing. It wasn't about getting famous. It was about being heard. And for the first time in decades, I was no longer whispering my pain behind closed doors. I was declaring it. And let me tell you something. Once a woman finds her voice, especially a woman over 60, you better believe she becomes unshakable. Narrated by Lorraine, age 68. Direct to viewers, you never know who's watching your journey. You think you're just surviving quietly, but someone out there sees the fight in you and wants to know more. That's what happened to me. And if you've ever thought, I'm too old for all this or no one would care about my story, please stop right there. Like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that their life still matters, and drop a comment if you've ever surprised yourself with how strong you really are. Because one day, a woman knocked on Janine's front door holding a notepad and a press badge. Her name was Emily Barnes. Young, smart, sharp eyes like she missed nothing. She worked for a small but respected online outlet that focused on social issues. She said she'd attended one of the talks I gave at the women's shelter and had been following my blog, Still Standing. "I think your story could help a lot more people," she said. I stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. "A reporter? Me?" She explained that they were doing a piece on elder financial abuse and family estrangement, real-life stories. She asked if I'd be willing to be interviewed. And let me tell you, every bone in my body wanted to say no. What if Jeremy saw it? What if Ashley twisted it into something ugly? What if people judged me? But then I thought about the woman at the shelter who whispered, I didn't know we were allowed to leave. And I said yes. We sat in Janine's sunroom. I brewed tea and told Emily everything, the long version. The invisible bruises. The weaponized silence. The empty dinner table. The slow erosion of worth. I showed her the letter Ashley had written. The fake apologies. The subtle manipulations. I even showed her a photo of me and Harold on our front porch from 1983, Back when life was full of Sunday barbecues and porch swings and people who meant what they said. She asked me one final question. If you could say anything to another woman who's going through what you did, what would you say? And this is what I told her. You are not a leftover. You are not a thing they get to use and toss. You're a woman who's been through storms, and you're still standing. That alone makes you powerful. You don't have to earn your space. You deserve it just by breathing. A week later, the article was published. Discarded but not defeated. Lorraine Mayfield's journey from family abuse to fierce advocacy, it went viral. Thousands of views. Hundreds of comments. Messages from women across the country, and even some from overseas. Women in their 60s, 70s, even 80s. Saying, "This is my story. Thank you for speaking it out loud. Because of you, I called my lawyer today." And guess what happened next? I got an email from Ivy's school counselor. She had read the article. She said Ivy had been quiet since leaving her private school, withdrawn, nervous. But when she read the article and realized her grandma was that Lorraine Mayfield, she lit up. The counselor wrote, "Ivy told me, that's my grandma. She's brave. She didn't let them break her." I sat at Janine's kitchen table, rereading that sentence over and over again. Because all the pain, all the nights I cried into a pillow in that cold guest room, all the times they made me feel like less, that one sentence made it all worth it. Because now, Ivy had an example of what strength looks like, not just the kind that roars, but the kind that endures. And even if Jeremy and Ashley tried to rewrite the story, the truth had already been published. I was no longer the quiet old woman in the background. I was the headline. You know what's funny? People think that once they say, "I'm sorry," everything goes back to normal. They think forgiveness is a reset button. But let me tell you something honest and maybe a little hard. You can forgive someone without letting them back in. And sometimes, that's the only kind of forgiveness they deserve. If this truth hits you, if it frees something heavy inside you, please like this video, share it, and comment below. Your peace is not up for negotiation. So here's what happened next. After the article went viral, Jeremy came knocking again. This time, he brought flowers. Cheap ones from the gas station. But that wasn't the part that stood out. What stood out was his face. He wasn't angry. He wasn't smug. He was embarrassed. He stood on the porch with his eyes on the welcome mat and said, "Mom, I read the article. I didn't know how far I'd let it all go." He paused. "You said something in there, that people will rewrite the story if you let them. I realized I've been doing that for years." For a moment, I almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered the fridge he padlocked. The night they left me alone with nothing but a dry sandwich while they went out to dinner. The time Ivy cried because her mom told her, "Grandma's sick in the head." No flowers, no matter how fresh or fragrant, could undo that. He kept talking. "I've started going to therapy. I've been trying to make things right with Ivy. I know I can't fix everything overnight, but I want you to know that I see it now. And I'm sorry. Truly." Then he said the one word that always carries the most weight. "Please. Please, can we start over?" And that's when I had to say the hardest thing I've ever said in my life. I looked at him not with hate, but with the kind of love that comes from finally loving yourself. And I said, "I forgive you, Jeremy. But starting over doesn't mean I forget who you were when I needed you most." He blinked. Tears welled. "I'll always be your mother. But I won't be your cushion. I won't be your emergency plan. And I won't be the woman who gives everything away just to be tolerated." I told him I hoped he kept going to therapy. That I was proud of him for trying. That Ivy deserved a father who showed up. But I also told him this: I don't owe you space in my life just because you finally see me now. He nodded. Slowly. Respectfully. And then he said something that surprised me. "That's fair." He handed me the flowers and turned to leave. I didn't stop him. I closed the door, put the flowers in a vase, and set them on the table, not as a symbol of reconciliation, but as a reminder. I survived them. I outgrew them. I healed past them. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever wondered whether it's okay to forgive but keep your distance, let me tell you plainly, yes. It's not just okay, it's healthy. You can release them from your heart without letting them back into your life. Forgiveness doesn't mean access. It means freedom. And on that day, I felt more free than I ever had before. Let me ask you something personal. What would you do if you had the chance to rewrite your will, not as an afterthought, but as a final declaration of who really mattered in your life? Because I did. And what I wrote, it shocked everyone, especially the people who once called me a burden. If you've ever had to make hard choices about who gets a piece of the life you built with blood, sweat, and sacrifice, then please like this video, share it with someone wrestling with guilt, and comment below. I choose peace over obligation. Here's how it happened. After the article went viral, and after Jeremy's awkward attempt at reconciliation, I sat with Leonard, my lawyer, and we began drafting a new will. Not out of revenge, but out of clarity. I told him, I want this to reflect my real family, the people who loved me, not the ones who smiled when I was useful. He nodded. He'd heard these stories before more than I wished he had. I left Jeremy and Ashley out of the inheritance entirely. Everything, my pension account, small investments, and the small property Harold and I had co-owned that Jeremy never knew I kept, was to go into a trust. A trust in Ivy's name. But here's the twist. It came with a clause. I called it the grandmother clause. And it read, this trust is to remain untouched and securely managed until Ivy reaches the age of 25. Funds may be accessed earlier only for educational expenses or health emergencies. However, should any legal guardian attempt to exploit, transfer, or control this trust through coercion or manipulation, all assets will be redirected to a women's shelter supporting victims of elder abuse. That was my line in the sand. I wanted Ivy to have a future, just not one filtered through the greed of her parents. Leonard leaned back and smiled. You want to protect your granddaughter from her own guardians. I nodded. I want to make sure Ivy remembers her grandmother not as the old lady in the guest room, but as the woman who made damn sure she'd never be treated like I was. We notarized it that day. I walked out of Leonard's office feeling like I'd just sewn up the last open wound. That same week, Ivy came to visit again. Janine had knitted her a scarf, and we made soup from scratch, like old times. She looked older, wiser. Her eyes carried the weight of things she couldn't quite explain. After dinner, she asked, Grandma, why did Mommy say you left us? I know you didn't. I took a deep breath and said, sometimes grown-ups lie when they feel guilty. But you don't ever have to lie to protect someone else's comfort. You deserve the truth. She looked at me and whispered, I want to live with you one day. My heart ached. I smiled. If it ever becomes possible, I'd love nothing more. Later that night, I watched her fall asleep on the couch with her tiny hand curled around mine. And I knew, no matter how much they tried to erase me, she would remember me, not just as grandma, but as the woman who stood up, spoke out, and wrote her own ending. Let me tell you something they don't talk about enough. Sometimes, when you walk away from abuse and start healing, the people you left behind, they don't heal. They rot. And when rot festers long enough, someone eventually smells it. If this hits home, I want you to like this video, share it with someone who's been afraid to report what they've seen, and comment below. Silence protects no one. Because a few weeks after my last visit with Ivy, I got a call. Not from Jeremy. Not from Ashley. Not even from the school. It was from Child Protective Services. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Ms. Ramirez. She spoke with a calm but firm voice. Ms. Mayfield, I'm calling regarding your granddaughter Ivy. We've received a third-party report expressing concern about her home environment. I understand you're her grandmother and not her legal guardian, but your name came up multiple times as someone she trusts. Would you be willing to speak with us? I sat there holding the phone like it was on fire. I didn't ask who reported it. I didn't need to, but deep down, I suspected it might have been someone from the school. Maybe that counselor. Maybe even a neighbor. All I knew was this: I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. Yes, I said. I'll talk. And I'll tell you everything. Ms. Ramirez came to Janine's house the next day. She had a warm smile, but her eyes were sharp, scanning the room like someone who'd seen far too much for one lifetime. I poured her tea and told her everything, my own story, Ivy's growing discomfort, the things Ivy whispered when she thought no one was listening. I showed her Ashley's letter, Jeremy's desperate voicemails, the article that started it all. I even gave her copies of the trust paperwork, the grandmother clause. Ms. Ramirez nodded slowly. You've done more than most people ever could, Ms. Mayfield. You've documented. You've protected. You've already started something very important. I asked her, gently, what might happen next. She couldn't promise anything. Of course not. That's not how the system works. But she did say this: if what Ivy's saying matches what you've told me, and if we find patterns of neglect or emotional manipulation, we will intervene. Children deserve safe, stable environments. Period. When she left, I felt a storm brewing. And yet, I wasn't scared. I was ready. Because the moment you choose to speak out for someone more vulnerable than you, even when it's uncomfortable, you become part of a legacy that's bigger than just your pain. That weekend, Ivy came over again. She was quieter than usual, fidgety, like she had a secret under her skin. So I took her out back, just the two of us, and we sat on the porch swing Harold built all those years ago. She finally spoke. Mom's been yelling more. Dad's always gone. I like coming here better. I feel safe here. I didn't pry. But I told her, gently, you can tell the truth, Ivy. Even if it's scary. Especially when it's scary. She nodded. The lady from CPS asked me questions. I told her the truth. That night, I prayed for Ivy. Not for her to be taken away. Not for revenge. But for justice. For clarity. For someone, anyone, to step in before the damage became permanent. And in that prayer, I realized something powerful. I had spent so much of my life asking, why didn't anyone stand up for me? Now I had the chance to be the one who stood up. And I wasn't backing down. You never think you'll end up in a courtroom fighting for your grandchild. You think you'll be baking cookies, mailing birthday cards, maybe spoiling them with too much candy and a little wisdom. But sometimes, life pushes you into places you never planned to be, so you can become the person you were meant to be. If you've ever had to step into uncomfortable shoes to protect someone you love, please like this video, share it, and drop a comment that says, "For them, I rise." Because 3 weeks after the CPS visit, I got the call. An emergency custody hearing had been scheduled. They'd interviewed Ivy. They'd interviewed Ashley. They'd even spoken with Jeremy, who, as it turns out, had relapsed into some very troubling behavior, credit issues, unemployment, and accusations of emotional volatility, as the report so kindly phrased it. The counselor from Ivy's school submitted a letter detailing her concerns. And they called me. They didn't ask if I'd be willing to testify. They asked if I'd be ready. Janine helped me pick out my outfit that morning. Not too fancy. Not too soft. Just clean lines, strong colors, and a pin Harold once gave me gold in the shape of a compass. Because you always know true north, he used to say. We walked into that courtroom, and I swear the air was different. Ashley sat on the left, arms crossed, dressed like she'd seen one too many crime dramas. Her lawyer looked nervous, like she knew this wasn't going to end well. Jeremy sat behind her. He didn't look at me. And across the aisle was Ivy, flanked by her own guardian ad litem, her advocate, her protector. She looked so small, so quiet. But when she saw me walk in, she gave the tiniest smile. That's when I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. When it was my turn, I walked up to the stand and raised my hand. They swore me in. My voice didn't shake. And I told the truth. Every part of it. I gave up my home, my car, my savings, everything, to be close to my son. What I got in return was silence, exploitation, and cruelty. I was called a burden. I was locked out of birthday parties. They sold my wedding ring. And worst of all, they used Ivy's love as a weapon to keep me quiet. The judge asked if I believed Ivy was in danger. I said, she's in an environment where love is conditional, where her feelings are minimized, where yelling is normal. That may not be a broken bone, but it's a broken spirit waiting to happen. Ashley's lawyer objected. The judge waved her off. Jeremy finally stood. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked halfway through and he sat back down. When Ivy's turn came, the judge asked her gently if there was anyone she felt safe with. She said one word, "Grandma." Silence. You could hear the air shift in the room. The judge reviewed the documents, the trust, the blog article, the counselor's letter, and Ivy's testimony. Then she looked at me. "Ms. Mayfield, would you be willing to take temporary custody of Ivy while the investigation continues?" I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I said yes. With everything I have. Ashley gasped. Jeremy hung his head. And Ivy? She stood up and ran to me. Wrapped her arms around me like the courtroom didn't exist. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a win. This was redemption. For me. For her. For every woman who stayed quiet too long. There's something sacred about watching a child sleep peacefully in a place where they feel safe. No fear of yelling behind the walls. No walking on eggshells. Just quiet breathing and trust. That's when you realize home isn't just a building. It's where they feel loved without condition. If you've ever created a safe space for someone after surviving chaos, I want you to like this video, share it with a heart warrior like you, and comment below, "This is home now." Because that first night, when Ivy moved in with me, that wasn't just a new beginning for her. It was one for both of us. We didn't do anything extravagant. No celebration. No balloons. Just soup on the stove, 2 bowls, and a soft blanket waiting on the couch. She unpacked quietly her small suitcase, a few books, and the stuffed bear I gave her when she was 4. The one Ashley said she was too old for, just last year. After dinner, we sat in the living room. Janine had gone to bed early to give us space. The house was quiet, except for the gentle ticking of the old clock Harold used to wind every Sunday. Ivy looked around and whispered, "Grandma, it's really nice here." I smiled. "I'm glad you think so, sweetheart." She hesitated, then added, "I feel like I can breathe." That cracked something in me I didn't even know was still holding tight, because I knew exactly what she meant. She climbed onto the couch beside me and asked if we could read a story, just like we used to when I first moved in with Jeremy. Before Ashley poisoned the well. Before silence replaced bedtime rituals. I pulled out the same old copy of Charlotte's Web. Its pages worn, its corners bent, its spine cracked open like a diary. We read 2 chapters before she fell asleep against my arm. And as I looked down at her tiny fingers curled into my sleeve, I realized something powerful. This was no longer about reclaiming what was taken from me. It was about building something new. Something she would carry for the rest of her life. She stirred in her sleep, eyes barely open, and said one sentence that I'll never forget until my last breath. "Grandma, this feels like home." And that's when I knew. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I'd made a mistake by speaking out, they led to this. Not revenge, not control, but peace. The kind of peace they tried to convince me I didn't deserve. The kind of peace you earn not by being quiet, but by being brave. And let me tell you, for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like a protector, like a grandmother. Like a woman who finally came home to herself. Sometimes, healing doesn't show up with confetti or some big, emotional breakthrough. Sometimes, it looks like sitting in the back row of a school auditorium with a proud smile on your face, clapping for a child who finally knows what it feels like to be seen. If you've ever rebuilt your life one small, quiet victory at a time, Please like this video, share it with someone you've lifted, and leave a comment that says, "Little moments, big healing." Because what happened at Ivy's school assembly? That was one of those little moments that felt like everything. Ivy had been at her new school for about a month. A small, community-based program that focused on emotional development just as much as academics. No private uniforms, no fancy tuition fees. Just people who cared. They gave her space to grow. She started talking more, sleeping better, drawing again. The teacher told me Ivy wrote an essay during writing hour titled, "The Strongest Woman I Know." And guess who it was about? Me. I didn't even know until they called to invite me to the monthly assembly where students would be reading from their essays in front of parents and staff. I sat in the third row, Janine beside me, holding my hand the way Harold used to when I'd get nervous before church potlucks. When Ivy stepped onto the little wooden stage, wearing her favorite sunflower dress, my heart nearly burst out of my chest. She cleared her throat, nervous, but her eyes found mine. And then she began. "The strongest woman I know is my grandma. She is kind, even when people are mean. She is brave, even when she's scared. She makes soup that smells like hugs. She listens to me when no one else does. And she makes me feel like I matter. When I lived with other people, I felt invisible. But with her, I feel like I'm shining. She tells me the truth. She keeps her promises. She makes me feel like it's okay to be myself. She's not just my grandma. She's my home." The room was silent. You could hear tissues rustling, sniffles echoing from the back. And me? I just sat there, hands over my heart, tears streaming down my cheeks, whispering, "Thank you, God. Thank you for bringing us here." Afterward, one of the teachers approached me. "Ms. Mayfield, you don't know how much your story has impacted the school. We've started conversations among staff about family guardianship and elder abuse awareness. You've opened doors we didn't even know were shut." I just nodded, still overwhelmed. Because sometimes, healing someone else heals you too. That night, Ivy and I walked home, hand in hand, her sunflower dress dancing in the wind. She looked up and said, "Did I do okay?" I stopped, knelt beside her, and said, "You didn't just do okay. You gave me the greatest honor I've ever received." We got home and ate grilled cheese sandwiches on paper plates, laughed over silly cartoons. She fell asleep with her arms wrapped around that same old bear. And me? I sat in my chair and looked around the house. No mansion, no crystal chandeliers, no luxury, just peace, love, light. Everything they said I didn't deserve. I had built with my own two hands. Let me tell you something hard, but freeing. Not every apology deserves a seat at your table. And not every "I'm sorry" is meant to heal you. Sometimes it's just a last-ditch attempt to reclaim a seat in the life they forfeited long ago. If you've ever had someone come crawling back with apologies after the damage was already done, I want you to like this video, share it with a woman who needs to hear this truth, and comment below. Too late doesn't mean I'm bitter. It means I'm better. Because one rainy Friday afternoon, Ashley came back. Not through a lawyer. Not with a phone call. She showed up in person. I was in the backyard with Ivy, helping her plant a tomato vine for her science project, when I heard Janine call out from the front porch. "Lorraine, it's her." I wiped my hands, walked around to the front, and there she was. Soaked from the rain, her makeup running, but that same smug edge still lurking behind her eyes. She didn't even say hello. She said, "I know I messed up. I know I went too far. But you have to understand I was overwhelmed. You living with us, it was just too much sometimes." There it was again. Too much. Too much because I cooked for them. Too much because I cleaned the house. Too much because I asked to be included in the life I helped create. She went on. "Jeremy told me what happened. He said you're raising Ivy now." I didn't think it would go this far. I crossed my arms, said nothing. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I was wrong. I should have treated you better. I should have appreciated what you brought to our home. And I hope, maybe one day, we can start over. Start over. That phrase again. Like this was a Monopoly game, and I just needed to pass go and forget all the nights I cried in silence. She pulled out a small plastic bag from her purse. Inside was a ring. Not my wedding ring. That was long gone. But something similar. Something newer. Probably bought to look meaningful. She held it out to me and said, I know it's not the same. But maybe Ivy could wear it one day. As a way to remember family. That was when I knew. She wasn't here for healing. She was here to reclaim narrative. To twist the ending of a story that no longer belonged to her. So I did something that may shock you. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply looked her in the eye and said, Ashley, this is your closure. Right here, right now. I accept your apology. But I will not forget the damage you caused. And I will not allow you to slip back into Ivy's life just because you regret the consequences of your choices. She opened her mouth to argue, but I raised my hand. Ivy is safe now, and I'm not interested in revisiting a version of the past where I was invisible. You had your chance, and you threw it away with both hands. I handed the plastic bag back to her. Give that ring to someone else. Or better yet, keep it. So you never forget what you lost. She stood there for a moment, rain soaking through her thin coat, mascara bleeding like guilt she couldn't contain. And then she turned and left. No final word. Just silence. The good kind. The kind that finally replaced the storm. I walked back inside, where Ivy was drawing a sunflower in crayon. She looked up at me and smiled. Who was that? I kissed the top of her head. Nobody important anymore. Because at the end of the day, what matters most isn't who comes back to say sorry. It's who stayed, who grew, who stood in the ashes and rebuilt something worth living for. You remember the moments they took from you more than the things they gave. They told me I wasn't fit to be around Ivy's friends. They said I was too old to throw a party. They said I'd embarrass her. But this year at Ivy's 9th birthday party, she ran into my arms and whispered, "This is the best day of my life." And I want you to know something. If someone's ever made you feel too old to matter, too broken to celebrate, too invisible to be part of joy, I want you to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this truth, and comment below, "My joy is not up for debate." Because this birthday party? It wasn't just a party. It was a healing. We held it at the local community center. Just a simple room with streamers, balloons, and a long table covered in homemade snacks. No caterers. No bouncing castles. Just music, laughter, and the smell of vanilla cupcakes I baked from scratch, just like my mother taught me. Ivy wore a yellow dress. I tied the bow myself. She asked if I could sit right next to her at the cake table. Not out of politeness. Out of love. She introduced me to her new school friends as my grandma, my real mom in some ways. That nearly took me down. There were other grandparents there too. Some quiet, some cheerful, some shy. I saw one woman sitting alone by the juice table. She looked like she'd come out of obligation, not excitement. I walked over, offered her a plate, and we got to talking. Turns out, her daughter-in-law barely lets her see her grandkids. She said, "I feel like a prop. They bring me out when it looks good and then put me away." I looked her in the eye and said, "You're not a prop. You're a pillar." They don't build homes on things they throw away. They build on what's strong. That's us. She cried right there. Quietly. Just a few tears. We hugged like we'd known each other a lifetime. Later, when the candles were lit and Ivy stood ready to make a wish, I asked her gently, "Do you know what you're wishing for?" She nodded. I already have it. 9 years old and already speaking in gold. They took so much from me. Stole moments, memories, dignity. But they couldn't take this. Couldn't take this room. Couldn't take her laughter. Couldn't take the woman I'd become. When the party ended and we cleaned up, Ivy stayed behind with me to gather the decorations. She looked up and said, "Grandma, can we do this every year? Just us." I smiled. "As long as I'm breathing, baby. Yes." every year. And in that moment, surrounded by torn gift wrap and half-eaten cupcakes, I realized this was more than a birthday. This was my comeback. Not in court, not in headlines, but right here among streamers and safety and smiles. They said I'd never host another birthday party. But guess what? I just hosted the best one yet. You don't always get to choose how your story starts, but you do get to choose how it ends. And more importantly, you get to decide what kind of legacy you leave behind. Not the money, not the property, but the truth, the proof that you mattered. And if you've ever had to rebuild your name, your dignity, or your family from the ashes of betrayal, please like this video, share it with someone brave, and comment below. This is the legacy I choose. Because this is mine. It's been almost a year since Ivy moved in with me. Her eyes are brighter, her confidence stronger. She no longer flinches when a door shuts too loud. She laughs like a child again. Because she is a child again. The legal case is still ongoing. Nothing is ever fast when it comes to the system. But custody is stable. Ivy is thriving. And Ashley and Jeremy? They're quiet. Occasionally, Jeremy writes letters, usually half-formed apologies wrapped in subtle pleas for reconnection. I respond when it feels right. But I don't chase closure anymore. Because I found it. In the mornings, when Ivy makes her bed and sings off-key. In the afternoons, when she tells me about her day and asks me what it was like when I was her age. In the evenings, when we light a candle and say 3 things we're grateful for before bed. That was her idea, by the way. Last week, I asked her what she wanted to be when she grows up. She said, someone who protects people. Like you. And in that moment, I cried. Not out of sadness, but because I knew my story. The pain, the silence, the betrayal, it all had purpose. I started the Still Standing blog with Janine. It's grown into a community of over 25,000 women. We hold weekly online gatherings. Some women have even left abusive households after reading our stories. Some have taken back their pensions, written their own wills, or filed reports that had waited years to be spoken. We aren't just surviving anymore. We're leading. Because the world tells women over 60 that their time has passed, that their voice is outdated, that their value lies in what they used to be. But we know better. We are mothers, grandmothers, guardians, warriors. And we carry legacies not in handbags or photo albums, but in the people we raise, the truths we speak, and the boundaries we finally enforce. I don't want a statue. I don't need applause. All I want is for Ivy to grow up knowing that even when the people closest to you turn their backs, you still have a choice. To rise, to fight, to write your ending differently. And when I'm gone someday, far from now, I hope Ivy stands tall and says, my grandmother. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. But she saved me. She saved herself. And because of her, I never let anyone dim my light. That's the legacy I choose. And maybe it's the one you're choosing too. Because if you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel like your story is over, let me remind you, it's just getting started. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If you connected with this story, if it reminded you of your strength, or opened your heart in any way, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, your story matters. Your voice matters. And your legacy is yours to write.